Welcome to the Hidden Bridge. My name is Henry. I'm a facilitator here at the Hidden Bridge. My passion is figuring out being, mystery, the self, everything about why we are here, existence. And my second big passion is sharing what I find with people. So I love to share my thoughts and my work with you, and I invite you to join this experience with me. Let's delve into it straightforward. Right, consciousness needs a structure. Today we are talking about a localized consciousness. When we're talking about a localized consciousness, it's not consciousness as a whole, but we are looking at psychology, philosophy, physics, religion, spirituality, mystery. But they all show us that consciousness needs a structure to come into being. And in a localized consciousness, we'll find that this sort of is the fragment of consciousness centered around spirit, soul, and mind, but we'll explore this. Don't run away with it yet. It's just a way of looking at it that I've sort of figured out for myself, and I would like to explore to you. And in the end, it really translates into understanding yourself. And that is part of my passion, why I like to share these things with people, so I can empower you to have a better experience in life. Concern yourself with what is really important. It's knowing yourself. So localize the consciousness. What are we? How does consciousness become localized? Aren't consciousness just localized? How do mind, soul, and spirit interact? What are all these other people, and why do I have to relate to them? So we find sort of two strings here: mind, soul, and spirit, the inner path, inner alignment, but then mind, body, and communion being that connection part. So the question here will always be, are you your body? Are you inside your body? Or is your body inside of you? So hopefully this toroidal vortex structure will make you think. I would postulate that you are more than your body. Where you are located, that's a completely different debate. So in order to move along and understand, let's look at some inspiring authors that we can learn from. So the first person here you will see is Viktor Frankl, somebody that went through a lot, and therefore he had a lot to contribute to the world. We'll talk about him again in our video on psychology. The Search for Meaning, famous book, Man's Search for Meaning. Consciousness becomes fully human when it embraces meaning. And you will find this thread throughout local consciousness. And also forms part of the dynamic torus of being, meaning and purpose. Transformation, experiencing hardship with purpose and meaning. You will not escape suffering. But life is not suffering, as another modern teacher teaches. Life is not suffering. You do experience suffering in life, but life is not just suffering. Authenticity, choosing and affirming your own path. This is probably where modern society has missed the boat completely. People are taught to become robots and not find their own path. And when you truly find localized consciousness and discover yourself, then authenticity and finding your own path becomes important. Relationship, engaging reality with responsibility and care. So because you understand what's going on and you can see other people going through what you have gone through, you become more empathetic. We judge less, we accept more. Think about this quote and the implication of the man who said it. Live as if you were living for a second time. Imagine having to go through what he went through and coming out the other side, knowing that he's one of a few who survived. I'll leave it there. Very good author, very interesting influencer. Love it. Our next one is one of the most misunderstood and misinterpreted and misappropriated thinkers of all time, Friedrich Nietzsche. Here we are looking at his transformation of the spirit through the camel, the lion, and the child. Let's look at his quote. One must still have chaos in oneself to give birth to a dancing star. That's just so beautiful. And now let's see how this comes out. The camel, the spirit of burden. The lion, the spirit of rebellion. And the child, the spirit of creation. Now, a student of mine once said, well, Nietzsche just assigned these images or types arbitrarily. And at that time, I was not that familiar with Nietzsche, so I had to go and think about, I know what he said, but why did he use these three, well, let's use the Jungian term, we'll get to Jung, archetypes. The spirit of burden, obedience, traditions, discipline, carrying inherited values. The camel said, what must I bear? What have been laid on my back? The lion, the rejection of these values. The destruction of false authority. The lion says, I will, so that you become the spirit of creation, innocence, renewal, creation, freedom, and new value creation. The child says, yes. So, figuring out Nietzsche is difficult because he rejected Christianity, but he grew up in a very fundamentalist Christian home. In fact, as far as I know, his mother used to be a nun and his father was a pastor or something. I'm sort of not always in, but he's very fundamentalist Christian home. And these are three very distinct Christian images. So the camel, of course, comes from, it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter into the kingdom of heaven. Go and watch my spirituality video. But in order for the camel to enter into the city, he has to go through the eye of a needle, which means it has to drop all the baggage and go on its knees so it can enter into the city. The lion is all over the Bible, but also the image of Jesus. Like it or not, the Lion of Judah, we are called the spirit of rebellion. That's so Nietzsche. It is just so Nietzsche. But the key here is the child, the spirit of creation. Be ye like babes. Have the faith of a child. So you go through a spirit of transformation to become a child again. Well done, Nietzsche. Then our main man, Carl Jung. Lots to say about Carl. Carl comes up in pretty much all my work. Because he was literally involved in so many things and linking so many concepts that it's almost impossible to miss him. And then modern psychology says, we don't want to look at him. We reject him. It's too mystical for us. Yeah, he said you would reject the soul and therefore you will become robots. Consciousness is a process of depth and integration. He's also the father of modern mystery. Our next video is about mystery, and one of the key concepts in mystery is archetypes. So first of all, of course, shadow integration, got the ego and the shadow, but the shadow is everything that you have said no to, that you wanted, desires, things, anything, and they keep building up there at the back. That was one of my harshest lessons in life. If I am feeling absolute rage, I must embrace it. No, don't go and burn down the town. Embrace the rage. Because the moment you say, yes, I am feeling the rage, I am experiencing, I'm feeling my blood pressure go through the roof, man, that moment you can control it, and you will choose not to harm anybody. But if you repress it, imagine when that thing comes out. So integrating the hidden and the repressed, the shadow. And there's lots of fluff on YouTube on that. Don't do that. But it is very important. Find decent scholars. There are some channels on YouTube that does good work here. And shadow integration is crucial to life. Don't ignore it. Archetypes, understanding the collective unconscious, and let's be very sure, the collective unconscious is not consciousness, but it is the field that creates archetypes that we experience. Talk a lot about the archetypes in the mystery video. It's crucial to understand mystery. So, individuation. The process of life is to becoming whole and complete. Now, I would disagree with that statement. You are complete. You're just rediscovering that you are complete. Be aware of being unconscious of the unconscious. Whatever is hidden in the unconscious, once you bring it up to the conscious mind, once again, I would rather use awareness, then you are in control. But if it's left in the unconscious, then it will rule your life. Very important to understand that. I also bring in John Lennox just for the simple fact we discussed him in religion. Brilliant author, brilliant mind. For the simple reason I brought him in here is because he really points out that the science can tell you how things work. Modern psychology, how? Even modern philosophy. But the moment you ask why, the wheels come off. It shows that there's a bigger order in place than just a mechanistical, reductionist, materialist worldview. So, this is our first part, mind, soul, and spirit. What makes you you, and why are you not total consciousness, and why is total consciousness not you, or are you? So forgive me, my framework didn't work out as I would have liked. It's supposed to be spirit, soul, mind, body, communion. But our aim of understanding localized consciousness is to avoid reductionism, avoid mystical inflation. See that the two. We don't reject everything because we cannot see it, but we don't accept everything because somebody said they saw it. Focus on the structural coherence, that's the bridge. Does it make sense in a rational, well thought out, coherent pattern? Gives us these two axes of understanding, mind, soul, spirit, mind, body, communion. I want to move on because geometry across traditions. So now when we look at consciousness from this meta perspective, we always see that it needs structure. Platonism, geometric order. Kabbalah, tree of life, the ascent and descent of awareness and consciousness. Hermetic philosophy, geometrics describing reality through duality and vibration and rhythm. Christian mysticism, the ascent through consciousness. Hindus got us the triads and the chakras. Buddhist philosophy, interdependent arising. You are not alone, but you're here to break free of the wheel of samsara. Sufi Islam, ever seen the swirling dervishes? Unity through circles. So beautiful. There's so much we can learn from all these traditions. Indigenous shamanic relational cosmology. And of course, modern science gives us systems, fields, complexity from chaos. First principle, chaos, complexity, system. We would not be able to see all these beautiful shapes and stuff if we have not created the foundation. But remember Einstein's warning. The intuition is the divine gift. The logic and the reason is the servant. The servant is not God. We have made the servant God, and we are rejecting the gift. Geometry of consciousness. So the point of all these systems are the same. They are not. No, they are not. Let's go back quickly. Consciousness repeatedly reaches for geometry when it tries to describe the relationship between the part and the whole. What we're seeing when we see this map is that mystery traditions try to link the whole with the part. Geometry becomes a symbolic language of localization, the way consciousness maps itself inside reality. So here, this is just my way of trying to use geometry and show you, but once again, it's not finite. All my work is based on my experience, my understanding. I'm not claiming to be the final authority of anything. I'm trying to see a better picture by integrating knowledge. Geometry of consciousness. Many traditions use triadic, cubic, and geometry to present human existence. Remember the Platonic solids. So structure, balance, and integration. See the triangle, mind, soul, spirit. Bring in the body communion. Now we've got a square. Let's go for the experience. Create the cube. Layered experience, growing, spiral, co-evolution, awareness. That's a journey. So that brings me to what we're really talking about, the three functions of consciousness. The inner part is the mind, which is not consciousness, but it is part of consciousness. The mind is agentic. We'll get to what that means, but it gives you what takes agency. The soul is experiential, and the spirit is observational. That unifies the internal logic of consciousness, but it also means that when psychology rejects the soul, and physics rejects spiritualism or the spiritual, they are denying consciousness, and therefore their studies on consciousness is going to fail, because you are literally cutting out the parts you don't like, and there's a lot. So localized consciousness operates through the functions of agency, experience, and observation. And you cannot cut out what you don't like. So the mind. This is our structuring capability. Hopefully you've not lost yours. Dark eyes, just the old Peter Pan joke of all them. Lost my marbles a long time ago. All the things I've lost, I miss my mind the most. The mind is there to direct attention, construct meaning, make decisions, and enable action. The agentic part. Mind is the organizing and acting function of consciousness. It is separate from the soul, the depth of experience, emotion, meaning, identity, value, resonance. The soul is where life is lived and felt. Picture of the heart, the second brain. What are you in alignment with, in resonance with, and coherence with? So that brings the spirit as coherence and observation. It's nothing that aligns you, centers you. Witnessing awareness, meta perspective, coherence, stabilization, and alignment. The spirit seeks the alignment. It sees when you go out of bounds, and it will let you know. Spirit maintains coherence within the system. It is one of the forms of the observer, that we will do in a video on the observer. Fascinating topic. So our second part here, awareness versus consciousness. Big distinction, do not confuse. Consciousness is a relational field experience. Emergent integration of information is what awareness is. So let's look at this. Usually the example is giving, I'm unconscious, the alarm goes off, amazing, now I'm conscious. Nonsense. Your subconscious mind is conscious the entire time. It measures and records everything. You have a prefrontal cortex to keep you from going mad and not having to process everything directly. So you were conscious but unaware. The alarm went off and now you are conscious and aware. Let that sink in. So awareness emerges through experience information integration. Soul, mind, spirit interact with each other. And then you become aware. Very important. Because awareness leads to, hopefully, integration and change. So let's look at localized consciousness. Individuals are localized coherent nodes within the field of consciousness. And you'll see the individual standing sort of on a wave field, but I want you to look back into the picture. That's what makes this, why I chose this background. Every dot you see is a node of localized consciousness. It's more than a star full of skies. It's literally the concept of the wave field of consciousness filled with nodes of localized, differentiated consciousness, and they're all connected to each other. So once again, think of how most people view the world as objects and subjects. Yes, René Descartes, I know that's your fault. The next step is to see the world as a network and a node. Everything is connected nodes in relation to each other. Nothing is outside that web. And the next level is to say, this is a dynamic wave field, constantly moving, and everywhere there's a node of light and it's constantly moving, so we have a dynamic landscape, as complexity calls it, of a wave field. It changes the way you perceive the world around you. And once again, It saves you a lot of energy because you realize you're not supposed to fight the wave. You are in the wave. What are you going to do with your localized consciousness in the wave? The integration system. So, the soul generates the experience, the mind structures the information, the spirit stabilizes the coherence. Information is preserved. Its nodes expire, but the information effects remains in the relational field. I'll address this in a second. Key idea: identity may dissolve, information remains embedded. Now, there's two levels we can look at that. At the meta level, Hawkins radiation, information cannot be destroyed. But on the more localized level, if you're familiar with John DeMartini and the breakthrough experience, John has been a mentor of mine for a couple of years. I've since moved on, but critical and beautiful thinker, and his breakthrough experience teaches us something. Most people know call A and B forms, but there's a C and D form, which is more about trauma and loss. And what breakthrough experience after breakthrough experience, thousands of people by now. If you lose someone, let's say you have a grandparent you dearly love and that person moves on. What that person meant in your life remains. It doesn't disappear because the person is no longer there. You will find that other people in your life will start demonstrating what they gave you. Yes, it's not in the same form, and usually it's the one to the many. I call that the eighth hermetic principle. They missed that in the Kabbalion. But information is retained. Nothing is lost. And we've got to ask ourselves certain things here, but I'll leave that for you to ponder about. Because the debate is, what happens when you move on? I can tell you the mind does not go with you. But does the soul or just the spirit? We don't know. It's unknowable, but it's interesting to get into the debate and see what people think. But what we know is that you cannot lose anything because the information remains complete and preserved. That's a hard one for people to contemplate. You cannot miss what somebody represents once you realize that that's all that you miss is your perception of what that person meant to you. If you see that usually now many people are doing that for you, it just changes reality into something interesting to observe. Let's move on to the mind-body communion part of our discussion. Once again, see the node in a network is the most beautiful. I can explain this to you. The node, mind, body, mind, spirit, and soul. Connected to other nodes through mind, body, and communion. You can see embodiment. We'll do a video on embodiment. It's part of being. Embodiment is not what people think. It's about presence. It's about focus. It's about boundaries. It's about being here. What am I showing? And I'm doing it through my body. Communion is literally the relationship itself. The original purpose of religion. You are having communion in every community that you are part of, from your family through to the organizations that you belong to. Action and agency. The mind shapes the world through knowledge, technology, planning, and creativity. See, the mind is this pivot, the hinge on which the internal thing works. That's why psychology, when they study the mind, is not, we don't throw them away, but they've, as Jung said, they rejected the soul. And that leaves open to criticism. So I'm doing the material is ready. I'm going to do a video on psychology. I just need to record it, find time to sit down and record the video. There's a lot we can learn from psychology, even though their modern psychology has become problematic. We do not reject the work that people do because they care. There are amazing psychologists. So going back to the mind, why does the mind function the way it does? But the mind is also how you shape your reality. Nothing for you exists outside your mind. Sorry about that. Understand that dynamic. You interpret whatever you observe in the world around you through your mind, and from that you construct the reality in which you live. But embodied consciousness is an experience that is grounded in sensation, the physical presence, movement, and the environment. You are here to have the experience, not to escape it. The quicker you embrace that, the easier the journey gets. And yes, there is a modern psychologist who likes to say life is suffering. I disagree. In life you experience suffering, but life is not suffering. Unless you, of course, have become the servant of suffering. So let's put all of this together. So humans exist within relationships, communities, and cultures. Once again, the graphic shows beautifully. Meaning becomes collective. You are not alone. Quoting Michael Jackson there. But your existence, being your localized experience, is really based on your connection with the world around you. And once again, once you realize that, do you want to be disconnected from it? But I don't like it. I don't like them. You're not liking yourself. That's what you're saying. You're not at peace with yourself. You don't know the joy of who you really are, which is why I'm here, to try and teach you this. So we put this together in a little matrix. You can use this as a sort of a sheet of how these two axes interact with one another as a matrix of human experience. The areas of consciousness also map onto this. They do not stand in isolation. I'm going through it quickly. We don't need to spend too much time. I just want to sort of say, do not see things as separate things. We don't work like that in the human mind. Things go together and they are dynamic. They are never static. Distortions that might arise. Once again, it's the one slide I didn't fix, so please forgive me for it. Should be philosophy. Religion comes through twice, so that should be mystery. Down there at the bottom, philosophy should be at top. But each domain sees only part of the structure. Once we put them together, we see a better picture. It's very important to understand. That's why you don't reject areas that you don't understand. You might be into quantum nuclear physics or whatever, But that doesn't mean that you have license to reject the yoga teacher, the mystery scholar, the religious author. Rather ask yourself, what can you learn from them? Because then you will see a bigger picture. We're not assuming everybody is correct all the time, but we don't dismiss anything without seeing the coherent pattern. That's the biggest distortion of localized consciousness. So we are trying to protect coherence by avoiding reductionism. We don't accept spiritual inflation or bypassing. And ideological moralism has got no space in the world of consciousness. I don't care about your ideology. Because guess what? It's only important to you. It doesn't exist outside of you. So to you it might be important, but that's not important to me, because that doesn't help me understand who you really are. That's a projection, usually out of the ego or the shadow. But we'll get to Jung in mystery and in philosophy and in psychology. Structural differentiation, integration without collapse. So we integrate the concepts, we put them together, we build a more complete picture. And that's why we say the dynamic cycle I go through, once again, Nietzsche, camel, lion, child. Through layered experience, you grow and you develop and you learn, and your sphere, remember the network picture, you get connected to more, you get to work with more. Got a profound implication for especially teenagers and adolescents in their development. Forget about skills, start thinking about relationships. Build your network from day one. Cycle of localized consciousness. Experience generates information, integration becomes awareness, awareness increases complexity, the spiral expands. It's a toroidal structure. Eventually it will collapse onto itself. But that's not for you to decide. Go with the experience. So awareness goes through integrated experience. The higher your awareness, the bigger your spiral. So we're not looking for moral perfection. There's no such thing as enlightenment. If somebody tells you he's enlightened, run. There is no such thing. In fact, if somebody truly is enlightened, he will not talk about it. You will not know that he is enlightened. Other than that, you will have an amazing time just being in that person's presence. So rather than looking for enlightenment in the the Himalayas or some remote place, look for enlightenment beside you on the train. The person you just flipped off on the highway. Most likely find more enlightenment there if you look for it. So, structural tendencies in increasing awareness through experience. Start expanding, or you can say that it spins faster and faster and concentrating, going up. It's two ways of interpreting the doors. So winding down, structural telos. What is this all about? So once again, we see this picture that consciousness fragments itself and then it seeks integration. That fragmentation, the spirit, soul, and mind locally across various domains it operates. And your journey is this path of Nietzsche liberation, Jung individuation, and then we'll put Heidegger and say integration. camel, lion, child, integrating the ego and the shadow, the anima and the animus. And then, what is your dagshine? The child. What do I do today that gives me meaning? The architecture of consciousness, once again, this is just my way of trying to communicate it, but it's integrating various aspects of being through mind, soul, spirit, body, action and communion. How do we participate? What do we embody? What's our relationships? Where do I exert my agency? What is the experience that I'm having? Localized consciousness is a relational field, and you are the node in that. So we can map the different areas. Physics is mind action, psychology, mind embodiment, philosophy, mind communion. Now we see spirituality as a soul in action, mystery is soul in embodiment, religion is soul communion, but the spirit remains observational. The spirit integrates action, embodiment, and relationship into a coherent awareness. So, sorry about that. No single domain contains the whole structure. Our implication, experience is not random. If we expect consciousness to be a field, then there's no random experience. Meaning is not an illusion. Development is possible. Awareness goes through integrated experience. So understanding the structure of consciousness may be the beginning of understanding ourselves. That's why I did this video. How do you view yourself if you don't even understand the basic spiritual blocks, because nobody really wants to teach this? So our last part is from my work on the Observer. From Rumi and Imam Arabi, there is the epiphanic mirror. Where are you having an epiphany? Where did you have a rest? Go through experience, polish it, so that you can see a better reflection of yourself, so that you can learn who you are. Creation is a mirror of the real. The human being is the closest focus of reflection. The perfect heart reveals divine self-disclosure. Now look at Rumi. He says it the most beautiful. The heart is polished by love, not amore, by accepting, integrating, reflecting, and working with remembrance and humility. Rust is the ego, attachment, forgetfulness, the judgments we have. When polished, the mirror reveals the beloved, the real you. And that is the purpose of the local consciousness. Why you are having the experience. Polish on, polish off. See yourself in the real mirror. Who is the real you? So life is for living. Experience is there. Emotion, relationship, beauty and suffering. Action, embodiment and responsibility. Life is the field in which meaning happens. You cannot escape this. Don't go about trying to escape this. That's nonsense. This is literally why you are here. The observer does not remove us from life. It helps us move through life fully, consciously and coherently. The experience gives us observation, gives us reflection, integration to fuller living. The observer becomes the witness, noticing without fusion. Create space between reaction and response. Maybe we should just let you think about that for a second or two. Makes reflection, choice, and integration possible. There is a process. Once again, you can read through that in detail, but the mirror reveals, the observer holds, the void transforms, integration returns us to life. The encounter, the change, the mirror, the observer, the void, polishing integration to a fuller life. And once again, you see a concept like void, and you just think of all the nonsense that's suddenly out there. Oh, the void state. Nobody has truly entered the void state. We'll do a pop spirituality video about it. The void is the nothingness. It is the never-ending story. Atreo. Yeah, you couldn't save the horse, could you? That takes you into the void. But the void is where all creation comes from. Nobody who has seen that will say, oh, just go into the void state. I'm sorry, there's so much we can learn from real spiritual teaching, and then there's this absolute mountain of nonsense being perpetuated by people trying to make a quick buck. And they are, once again, they are doing it because there are all these people who just want a simple answer to much deeper truths. I will leave you with that thought. As Jung said, projection, DeMartini, reflection and balancing, Neville Goddard, see the assumed state. Yes, I love Neville, but the perversion that's presented. Rumi and Ibn Arabi, and even in alchemy. There's no quick Negredo, and we don't celebrate the Rubido. The Philosopher's Stone comes at a very high price. Nobody who is close to that, I don't know anybody who's ever actually really achieved that state, but nobody who's on that journey does that with celebrations and woohoo, it's time for the whitening. There's a reason you start with the blackening. It's the dark night of the soul. If you've been through a dark night of the soul, you don't make light of it. Well, I've not met anybody who's really been through a dark night that is all chippy and cheery about it. But we'll do more on that in other videos. So, thank you for joining me on the Hidden Bridge. Hopefully you will continue your journey with me towards a world of wonder. That's the purpose of the journey, is discovering the magic and the being of everything that is. Hope to see you soon.